reality is, it doesn't start with creative. Because if creative, as you know, Jordan, if creative is what you start with and that's your North Star, you're not going to get consistent results. Whereas
marketing is not something we do for entertainment. Marketing is something that we do for businesses. And once you factor that back in, it's got to work.
Marketing is evolving at such a rapid rate right now. It's almost as if a marketing degree has a shelf life of 6 months. Like the stuff you were... Hello. Welcome to the Challentunity podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lawson. As usual, I am joined by my co-host, Jordan Wolf, who believes the less he knows about people's affairs, the happier he is. Jordan, how are you doing?
Probably true. People's brains are messy and nobody wants to look inside them. Ugh, gross.
It is true. It is true. It is true. And affairs are funny because the reality of people's affairs is they might matter to them, but not to you, and vice versa. So, running a business, and if you have staff that are having problems, I mean, that's where it gets a little bit more complicated.
Yeah. Not that would ever happen, but yeah.
Well, we have a very deep, I think, episode today. The last few episodes have been a little bit high level, talking about social media and such. Today is getting deep into business modeling, marketing systems engineering, the role of creativity in that. I think we're talking about planting evergreens first. What the heck does that mean? Why do you feel this is a topic today, Jordan, that gets you going? Like, why does it get you going?
Well, as we reflect on where the podcast is going, the types of pieces that we've done in the past, like you said, we've covered a lot of ground already. We've talked about a lot of high-level topics. We've got to talk to some great people along the way. But there's things that we, in particular, you or I together, we've built an agency together, for example, that was built around solving some fundamental problems, things that about the industry or about the way that we approach things in marketing or in business or in strategy that just don't rub us the right way. So this is one of those topics for me that I feel is important. And, it's obviously motivated us enough to build businesses around it and to kind of staple our whole processes around solving these problems. So as much as presenting this to the community now that we've developed, I think that's an important step along the way as well. It's like these kind of, they're not really like myths that we're dispelling. They're more like problems that we saw were fundamental that we're trying to break free of, or misunderstandings about things. And we believe people might be approaching things the wrong way. So we're going to give you our take, and maybe it's something you agree with or not, but this is something that we've found is one of those key areas. And you mentioned evergreens. Basically what we're going to be talking about today is marketing is one of those things that everyone gets excited about, and they should. Marketing's fun. It's a area of business that's, it's not accounting. Sorry, accountants out there, but it's not accounting. And you get into the side of business, hopefully, because you do want to play around and be a little more creative. And it does tend to lead and draw in those types of people that might have a creative bend to them. However, there's a little bit of, I think, a overcompensation on that front where everybody looks at things in pop culture and looks at the way that marketing agencies or creative types in business tend to be pictured as this kind of idyllic, coming up with great, crazy ideas on a whiteboard, getting the big campaign out there and making the big slogan on a billboard and making everybody a bunch of money as a result. The reality is, many businesses do follow that as their, hey, we're a marketer, therefore that's what we do. We come up with crazy, brilliant ideas all the time, and we're an idea factory, and it's amazing and it's fun. It's like playing in a toy box 24/7.
Yep.
But marketing, unfortunately, got to be reminded from time to time, marketing is not something we do for entertainment. Marketing is something that we do for businesses. And once you factor that back in, it's got to work. And there's some things that I think people skip ahead of because they want to get to that fun stuff. They want to get to the creative elements. But before you get the, I think, privilege to do those more creative and wild and risky things, playing with technologies and new slogans, you got to build those fundamentals first. A business that has an amazing idea that maybe has that once in a lifetime campaign, but then goes out of business 3 months later because they didn't remember to do the basics, is still a failure. So a lot of what we need to remind ourselves more humbly as marketers, in our opinion, is that we're here to solve problems with developing marketing models and systems that can get you to the point of you can take those risks, you can do the crazier things and make yourself differentiated from your audience that way. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
No, it is. It is. And I think where we come into this is not from the perspective of agency owners looking at it to run from the lens of, hey, we've learned this because we've run our business this way. We look at it from the lens of we've talked to literally thousands of businesses over 15, 16 years of time, where you come across these reoccurring challenges and problems, and you start going, wait a minute, there's common denominators here. There's mentalities that people have that are contributing to these problems. There's staffing issues where, people are put in scenarios to fail and they don't even realize it, i.e. the marketing manager was told to go, increase rankings. Rankings don't mean leads. And it might not even be the fact that you're ranking well for that specific key term. That might not actually be the problem. It might be the website. It might be, something wrong and you have to run CRO or whatever the case might be. So the mentality that you come into is really, I think, a big part of the discussion today.
Yeah, and mentality is probably the right framework to get this started. It's not that you're doing anything wrong per se. It's just that you're coming in with a misunderstanding about a part of your business that, you wouldn't, in our case, usually people are coming to an agency because they're not super skilled and knowledgeable about marketing. So they come in with not only a lack of the knowledge, but also misconceptions and all the things that they've been kind of trained bad habits and bad thoughts about what maybe this should be or what it could be rather than what it really is. And it would be often people come in and talk to us and they might have this really excited look on their faces and they go like, I really want to do this campaign. This is really important to me. I want to get these ideas out there and I want it to be really important and really flashy. And we're like, great, that sounds really interesting. Tell me more. But then when you dig past the surface, it's like, so you want to take half of the money you have as a business to do this really risky, unproven thing. And you haven't even done, do you know how many leads you get tomorrow? No. Then this is a huge risk to place for your entire business when you don't even know that you're guaranteed to at least keep the doors open if this doesn't work out.
Or they don't even understand the runway it's legitimately, realistically going to take to even get to that point.
Yeah. They're going into the casino of creative ideas and saying, place everything on 10 black. And you go like, oh, okay, well, you can choose to do that, but that's a very risky way to run a business. So we're going to talk about those boring first steps, building up. There's a concept in advertising specifically where they split up campaigns into what's known as more evergreen campaigns. And then there's more like traditional campaigns for the sake of getting a creative idea out or doing a sale or a special that might have a start, stop, or unique one-off requirement. But evergreens are meant to run at all times, no matter what. They have a fundamental purpose. Like we run this campaign in order to get initial interest from group A. We run this campaign to cultivate group A into, qualified leads. We use this campaign to do that. And those can run regardless of whether you start them today or a year later. They should largely be proven out to do the same thing that they were built to do on day one. So that's true of not just advertising. That can be true of a bunch of different aspects of marketing when you start building out a marketing model. So maybe that's a good place to start. I just use the word model. We treat marketing as a model or a system, but I think a lot of our clients, like I said, don't know marketing as their strength. So if you're a business owner or you're even a marketing manager, looking at your business model is usually a good starting point. But is a business model the same thing as a marketing model? Is a really interesting kind of topic to explore. I don't know how you've kind of probably come across many people that bring a variety of different models when you speak to them at first. And how do you get them from business model to marketing model mentally?
Well, there's a number of different things. I think most people are used to certain elements within marketing, right? Social media, for example. Everyone just understands social media, at its most simplistic form. However, they're usually extremely knowledgeable in their audience, their objectives, and usually the sales process or whatever that conversion funnel is. So i.e., we know we need e-commerce, or, hey, we got a 3-week or 6-month timeline, and Bob, our sales guy, is going to go knock on doors, or whatever the case may be. They know that market really, really well. But you're correct. Often building out a engine for your marketing is usually not something that they're understanding. Like, they don't understand it. And I usually will help them understand, look, there's 2 things day one that you need to understand. The first is, I need to know what defines a success here. If we don't understand the objective you're trying to achieve very clearly, if it's not defined, how can a marketer start building out a marketing strategy? So day one, knowing your objectives and goals is where you start. So if you're a business and you have revenue targets, geographical targets, maybe a certain sector of your business gets you more revenue than another, maybe there's a shift in your market, maybe you're a non-for-profit and you need more donors, maybe you need more volunteers, maybe just more brand awareness for X, Y, and Z, how you measure that, all those things are tied into your goals and objectives. Even municipalities have dollars that they have to spend in a certain window of time. Just spending it, first of all, is irresponsible. But second of all, there has to be a goal and an objective and a why behind what you're doing. So for me, back to your question, do I come across it? Absolutely. I first have to go pump the brakes. That's great. You want to run your social media. Why? That's great. You want to build a website. Why build a website? Why a website? Nobody builds a website or implements a routine because they should, or they were told they should, or they think they should. They read a blog somewhere. It's usually because under the surface is a current which is driving them to do something for some reason. Mm-hmm. That's where I start.
Yeah. So knowing those objectives and kind of, we just call this objective first planning, because it's a good starting point, and you can kind of branch backwards and then retest each of the things they bring up. Or like you said, okay, social media, but how does that apply to achieving that objective? The other thing that you want to kind of snap back to is hopefully they have some idea of what their business model is. If they can tie those 2 things together, the objectives and the business model, now we can start to strategize to some degree. And that's where there is a bit of creativity, and we'll talk about creativity in the role of marketing. And even when you're talking about evergreen activities, which seem more kind of permanent and not as creative and flexible, there's some creativity in planning out the strategy of your marketing mix, how that aligns with your business model. So once you know those objectives, and you can go, okay, so your objective is to sell this product, or to, get this idea out there, or to be visible in this market. Then we can go and we can look at all the tools in our toolkit. We can see which ones maybe your competitors are relying on. Maybe there is a direct road, which is, we can advertise it to this group and people will buy the product. But all your competitors are already doing that. Now you've kind of got to think, is there maybe a second road or something they're neglecting that can help us to stand out or differentiate even? So the model that you build out of your marketing mix to create that marketing engine, that marketing model overall, can not only perform, but it can also differentiate you and build even the little micro moats for yourself if you do it in a very unique and defendable way.
I totally agree. And I think understanding what differentiates you in the market is what's going to eventually get you to the place where it starts dictating your messaging, your creative, all that kind of stuff. But what happens a lot of the time in the marketing world is it starts with creative. It starts with design. It starts with, I saw this really cool ad or this really cool thing on Canva or something, and it now spurs on these ideas, because that's how creatives work, right? They get inspiration. It's mathematical. Boom, boom, boom. Now they got this really cool thing, and they want their creation to be put out there. But the reality is, it doesn't start with creative, because if creative, as you know, Jordan, if creative is what you start with and that's your North Star, you're not going to get consistent results. Whereas if you start with data, objectives, understanding your audience, then the rest comes. And then the sex appeal of marketing and the creative and all that stuff makes logical sense. And then when you get results, or even if it doesn't work, you can reverse engineer it and it will work because it's based on good fundamentals.
Yeah, and we kind of alluded to it at the beginning as to, okay, so obviously you don't want to start off with these risky one-off concepts. You should be building these fundamentals, but maybe it's worth even delving a little bit further into that point and really driving it home. The reason that we need to build these fundamentals. So it's not just because it's good practice. It's really down to the basic fact that a business is meant to grow usually. A business owner wants to refine, to open a new location, to hire that next new employee, to try launch a new product, maybe, move into a new geographic area. All of those things take investment, not always monetary, sometimes time and effort, etc. In any of those situations, you cannot do that with confidence when you don't know what your business revenue is going to look like next week. Are you going to get leads? Are you going to get no leads? Are you going to sell product or not sell product? If you don't know that with some degree of confidence, you can't make investments into the future that bring your business to that next level or take you in that new direction. So that's why this is so important. So you can view kind of more one-off marketing concepts or the more high concept type technology plays that people might be playing around with these days, and AI and all that kind of stuff. It's really exciting and maybe worth doing just to make it your next big thing, and it could be. Yeah. But you don't even get the chance to do that if you don't have the confidence to know that the fundamentals are taken care of. You got the sales coming in. You can kind of close your eyes to it and move on to another priority because that's already locked down. So some of the ways that we approach that problem ourselves, we look at this as more of like an engineering problem in a lot of ways, which this is a very uniquely our view on it, but you can take still a more creative approach once you kind of go like, okay, I'm building evergreen, I'm building fundamentals. You can still come at it from a creative perspective. You can be a creative marketer. Yeah,
we hope it's not just our way of viewing it.
Yeah. Like this is something I encourage you all to think this way. Marketers these days in this data-driven environment where we've got access to more information than we've ever had as a discipline, it leads itself into concepts of process engineering, really. And a good marketer, that especially somebody who's concentrating on building these fundamental systems, should be thinking about systems engineering as a skill set, a view of the world, a methodology that they follow, so that you can build these systems from pretty basic, standards. And, process engineering at a very, very broad concept is just going, okay, there's an input and there's an output. How do I get those two things talking to each other so that one is maximized and, you're driving down costs and removing friction between those 2 points? Now, that could be a car factory, or that could be a marketing system. That could be inputs can be customers or potential customers. Outputs could be e-commerce sales. And then how do you get those two worlds together? Well, maybe you need to do some search marketing to get some Google search rankings, to get some traffic to a website that gets into a secondary remarketing campaign that becomes, your shopping cart interaction rate response system, which then gets you the sales. And if that's reliable, you have just engineered a system that has inputs converted into outputs that match with your business model and goals and objectives. Voila. You can then move on to your next step of the phase of the business and do those fun, creative things on top of that.
I think since we are, really young, when we're kids, maybe this is aging me. Maybe like some of our viewers are really young. Maybe you're going, oh yeah, Chris, I was in my 40s when I had thought of this. But when I was a kid, when you went to a gumball machine, that was like the best day, right? Your parents gave you a quarter or a nickel or whatever the heck it was that went in. But you knew that when you put that quarter in and you turned that dial, that a gumball was going to come out. Sometimes two, but usually one. It was a transaction that you knew was going to happen. And in the world of marketing, we don't think that way. We think, I'm going to throw some money on my ad budget and it's not guaranteed. And I don't know why. Or I'm going to run social media campaigns. I'm going to put my heart and soul into my content, but it may or may not actually get me sales. Why? Why can't I measure that? Okay, I've produced 20 pieces of content and I haven't really dented the market when it comes to my organic, reach on with Google. Like, it should be, you put a quarter in, you turn the knob, you know exactly what you're getting, That's the way we're trained since we're kids. So, but when you look at that gumball machine and you were to open it up, take that plastic off and all that, there's wheels and cogs and mechanisms in there that are designed and engineered to ensure that every single time you put that quarter in, you're getting that gumball. And that's where we try to get with, engineering consistency in your marketing mix. You open up your marketing, mix. It's not just search marketing, social ads. You open that up, there's click-through rates, there's billions of campaigns happening. Everything has a different, cost per acquisition. You're looking at your lifetime value. Things are popping over into your sales funnel. You're measuring your CRM. You're doing all these things. Once you get it to a point where you can actually know every little cog, every dollar, every cent, every bit of conversion rate throughout your entire marketing mix through to your sales funnel, and you zoom back out, you put that plastic back on your marketing mix, every time you put a quarter in, you're going to get a gumball. And that's, I think, at the end of the day, and as cheesy as it sounds, where marketers need to start, really trying to get to. I think that's the goal, that you can be that consistent. And I know that might seem wild to some people, but we've been able to do that with our agency. So I know I'm blabbing here, but let's actually talk about what that looks like. If you're a marketing coordinator, a CMO, you have, your boss or your manager or whoever breathing down your throat, right? So at the end of the day, you need to make sure that when you're given and trusted a certain budget, that you can get those results. If you're a general manager or a business development person, you need to know every single day that you can trust what's coming into your lead funnel, or how you're going to build up the business. If you're a business owner or an executive, you need to be able to trust, I'm going to pull dividends this quarter or this year. You need to trust that you're going to have more money replenishing the bank account in the next quarter or this next year. The only way that you can do that is back to what you were talking about, Jordan. Those inputs and outputs are reliable and consistent.
Yeah. And you learn over time to pay attention to those things and just view the whole system as a whole and go, okay, well, I put my quarter in, but the gumball didn't come out. What happened?
Yes.
Well, then you can tear apart the machine and go like, oh, this gear's a little sticky and this thing didn't line up with that, so it got stuck. Like, okay, cool. That could be, the equivalent of, well, they went to this landing page, but the button actually didn't work to get them to the shopping cart. Well, we could fix that. That's an obvious reason why they didn't check out at the end of the e-commerce experience. It could be a lot more complex and a lot more, difficult to find sometimes. Sometimes it's really blatant and clear like that. And sometimes it's a whole bunch of little things that just trickled out the experience at the end. I think there's also one other side piece to this that makes it feel a little counterintuitive to think this way, especially in marketing, is a lot of marketing is kind of coming to terms with the fact that we're communicating with human beings. And I think, as we all know, experiencing other human beings, we're messy. We're different. We're all a little bit weird. It's hard to predict how any one person is going to react to something. However, again, the advantage of our modern world and having the amount of data we have is the other thing we've also learned about human behavior as writ large in large groups. We're really easy to predict what we're going to do. Our fundamental motivations in a large enough group are pretty basic. Yeah. So you don't have to be able to get every single person who goes through your system to convert, but you should be able to find what that average is and be able to go like, okay, if I do this in this size of a group with this kind of effort and this kind of investment, do I get a return from that I can live with and that hits my objectives and goals, and then hopefully has some scalability to it down the road. So, it is something that maybe is the darker side of this realization, but we're simple creatures at the same time. We're complex and simple, and that we can kind of use that insight and kind of just lean into that and just accept it for what it is. It's not good or bad. It's just that is the reality of our human condition writ large.
Well, and just like any inventor, you're not going to go one for one with your invention. You're not going to wake up and go, Eureka, and then start building it and boom, it works. Boom, you've created the flying machine. It takes iterative, how many iterations? Like 1,000 iterations, and you just keep going because you're passionate about that end goal. But as marketers, and I shouldn't say marketers, as business people, we should view marketing as something that is iterative, just like an inventor. You refine, you do hypothesis, you test it, you run it, you learn, you pass that off into the next cycle, and you just constantly get it better and better and better. And then you get to a place where it's reliable, and away you go.
Yeah. And, I think back to the start of the episode, there's this expectation about what it is to be a marketer, and it tends to lean more to that kind of Mad Men expectation of sitting in a room, coming up with great ideas and pitching them. And that's fun. And it's a kind of, you don't want to dispel that kind of dream, because it does still exist. Like going down this road doesn't mean that there's no room for creativity. There is. It's just the role that it plays is not the focus or the paramount. That's not your North Star anymore. It's instead more of a lens through which you view all sorts of steps along the way. You should look at the problem of finding, the next iteration of the refinements in your system with a creative lens. Maybe there's a more, unique way to solve that problem that helps you differentiate yourself. Or maybe there's a way that you can do it that, might be a little bit, require some lateral thinking, and you solve the problem in a really unique and powerful way as a result. That can also in itself differentiate you from what other people are doing, give you that kind of strategic and competitive advantage, maybe save you money along the way. Those are all creative problems. And of course, yes, there's still usually artwork needed for ad campaigns, even if it's going to be something that's going to be going all the time. You need to know how to use that creatively, to look at the concept. How do I creatively create something that's going to work all again and again and again and again? And that's really difficult. I mean, you look at the Got Milk campaigns, that'll work forever, but that was a difficult thing to come across. And so just because it's going to be out there for a long time doesn't mean it doesn't require a lot of creativity and hard work on that front as well.
Can I get something off my chest?
Yes.
Do you know how you talk about Mad Men all the time in all your analogies?
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually seen Mad Men.
You probably should, just so like when I'm talking to you, I don't get just a blank stare every time. But
yeah, you're like,
it's a good show. Yeah.
You know that like old guy in Mad Men? I'm like, I sure do.
It's worth watching. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, I feel good now. Is there anything you need to get off your chest, Jordan?
Ruin our relationship forever. Like, I can't tell him. I just can't tell him.
Is there anything you want to tell me?
Talks about it too much. No, I think we're good. But we should probably get back on track here. I think once you get through that fact that you can build something that's stable, build something that's going to be reliable and give you that confidence, then you can open up all sorts of different doors to play with different ideas and get back into the creative for creativity's sake and take a big risk and do something silly and see if it works or it doesn't work. Throw things on the wall, see what sticks. But you're doing that while standing on a platform that's not sinking or that isn't even there at all. You're doing it from a point of confidence and stability. And I think that gets you a lot of new opportunities to go. Well,
further. and often the problems that you face are much smaller, right? Because you've built this foundation. If there's a leak, you don't have to tear it down, down to the foundation again. It's you have so much more data, so much more analysis, videos of users on your website and heat maps, and it's endless. You have everything you need to source out the problem and implement. Like there's some peace of mind there, I think.
Now, obviously, we run an agency. This is hopefully applicable information for business leaders or marketing managers or anybody who's involved in these types of discussions about strategy and modeling. But your particular role in our agency is very much on the front end, doing that initial strategies, working with clients and coming up with that strategy and working through their decision-making process and finding out what all these aspects are before you land at even what these evergreen pieces might be that make up that fundamental marketing mix and model in the end. What are some of the quick kind of tips that we can walk through that help you to go through that maybe a business manager sitting at their desk today listening to this might be able to apply themselves to kind of work through to get to that conclusion?
Yeah. What's funny is that, you talk to hundreds of companies over the years and what you kind of realize is that comments are made like, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't understand that. Or, people become bullish and they just want to force their way into the market or whatever. And you just kind of start seeing a lot of the same type of trends and the same type of mentalities and people. And I just want to start by saying that's okay. Like, everybody's just at a different stage of understanding things. In the world of marketing, I've said it a billion times. I don't even know if it's true, but it does ring home. And that's that marketing is evolving at such a rapid rate right now. It's almost as if a marketing degree has a shelf life of 6 months. Like, the stuff you were learning in school a year ago is almost not even applicable. You know, your fundamentals are, but you know, how you run something is different. I mean, the platforms are changing, algorithms are changing, human behavioral patterns are changing, it's just everything. So it's okay. That's the first thing to say, is it's all right not knowing everything. I would encourage people, be open, learn, ask questions. There are things, though, that you should know, right? So when you're approaching your marketing team, your marketing manager, or in the case of, say, us, and you're coming to an agency that either you've partnered with for a long time or it's brand new and they got to learn a lot about you, you need to know your goals and objectives. If you do not know that, like I said earlier, there's no way that agency will know how you're going to measure the program, right? It's going to dictate a lot of things that come later on, you know, down the pipe. So clearly defining your organizational objectives, and I say organizational because you might not be a business. You might be a non-for-profit or a municipality or, you know, whatever the case might be. I think that's really important. Really important. I mean, and on the marketing side, Jordan, I'll ask you, those objectives can change, right? It's not like you come in, you're like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And then, oh, we've accomplished it and you just stop marketing. So how does marketing continue to work as you know, objectives and goals change?
Well, I think there's multiple different things that can influence and adapt. You have the competitive external environment. Maybe some new entrant comes in. Maybe there's a technology change. So you've got the SWOT analysis type stuff. There's external and internal things that can change in a business. There's also fundamentals on just like your business has its own goals and trajectory that it's trying to build. Like you don't just say, oh, I'm building a house, and then one step you build a house. It's like, no, I'm going to frame up the outside, or I'm going to pour the foundation, then build the frame. Then I'm going to put the drywall up. And each one of those things is an objective, but it doesn't make sense to put the drywall up without the frame. So it may not be an objective yet, but once the prior objective is accomplished, then you move on to that next one and the next one and the next one. You ultimately build the business that you were hoping to build in the end.
But all I want is a red door, a white picket fence.
Yeah. Well, it's you can have those things. They just won't stand very well or be very useful.
There you go.
The other thing is just having more of a deep understanding of what it is you're doing, learning from your market, learning from your customers and the steps that they go through and how they engage with you. So collecting the data and understanding the role that you play can shift through the marketing, and even the buyer's journey has different kind of evolutions that occur.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that one up, because, you know, if you're not familiar with the buyer's journey, you are. You just might not call it that. If you're an executive or a business development person, for sure on the sales side, you understand that buyer's journey. You understand what they go through to justify your reaching out to you or buying your services or whatever. But there's an awareness, a consideration, and decision-making phase that people go through. That is not our methodology. That's the world's methodology. And you'll see other organizations even break that up into 5 or 6 steps even, but that's the gist of it. Understanding that buyer's journey is important because it now starts to create a framework of what type of content they need to read or see when they're in those different phases. What networks or platforms are they going to or needing to be marketed on in order to see that content, right? Nurturing that individual through to the point where they're able to justify some form of a conversion, whether it be a sale, a form submission, a phone call, or whatever, is very, very, very important. And don't kid yourself, that buyer's journey doesn't end there. You now have to actually sell that client or service the client for that product or that service they purchased or whatever the case might be. Your marketing can continue to do that. So understanding the buyer's journey is important once you've understood your objectives.
Yeah. So I think just kind of to take this all back to home. So we started today talking about something that we find to be maybe a misconception that has led people to approach marketing in a way that's maybe not in their best interest. Maybe it's not well timed. Maybe it's based upon lack of, clarity or understanding. But, hopefully we've been able to show you that there's a different way of looking at things, and, building that fundamental platform that you can then build out into creative things doesn't mean you can't do them. It just means the order of operations is more aligned. Mm-hmm. So if you're sitting in front of your business right now wondering what to do next, or you were about to get into that next marketing cycle or budgeting for your marketing, and you're wondering what to do and you don't have that built already, if you do not have an existing marketing engine or model that you can rely on to know exactly what's going to happen next month and the month after that, and the month after that, and the next quarter and the year after that, even ideally, then that should be the thing you're working on. Forget everything else. It's kind of a distraction. Get that done. It's going to allow you to get eventually to that other thing, to that creative concept, to that new idea, but from a point of confidence and strength. Mm-hmm. So that would be my kind of challenge back to the audience is give it that a good think. See where you stand in that process.
Nobody will build a house on a rocky foundation logically. Mm-hmm. So let's build strong foundations. Whew. Can we breathe now?
I think so. Yeah, we ranted enough. Yeah, we made our point.
Are your ears bleeding?
Not yet. But hopefully we ruffled some feathers and maybe disturbed some fundamental ideas about misconceptions about marketing, and hopefully make some stronger businesses along the way.
Well, I'll challenge you, our listeners. I want to hear your feedback on this stuff. This is not common. This is not the way that most agencies talk. We're not doing this to promote our organization. We're doing it because we truly believe that if the world can actually change their mentality of how they view these things, we're actually going to see a lot more success across any industry, so on and so forth. So, throwing the baton over to you. Comment, leave your information. We want to hear your thoughts. Shoot us emails, share the podcast, make sure that you subscribe. Obviously we produce this podcast every 2 weeks. We're on Spotify, on Apple, on Google. We're also on YouTube. Make sure you check us out. We definitely want to hear your feedback and want to absolutely be on this journey with you as we continue to do this.
Absolutely.
So that being said, we appreciate you, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Adios.